Hey everybody. So I'm taking a pause off the trail and I wanted to share with you something on the lines of, what could be helpful for entrepreneurs and business owners. So and leaders. So this is coming from Exodus 18 and verse 13 starting. And this is Jethro's wise advice. The next day, Moses took his seat to hear the people's disputes against each other. They waited before him from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw that Moses was doing for the people, he asked, What are you really accomplishing here? Why are you trying to do all this alone while everyone stands around you from morning till evening? Moses replied, Because the people come to me to get a ruling from God. When a dispute arises, they come to me. I'm the one who settles the case between the quarreling parties. I inform the people of God's decrees and give them his instructions. This is not good, Moses' father-in-law exclaimed. You're going to wear yourself out, and the people too. This job is too heavy a burden for you to handle all by yourself. Now listen to me and let me give you a word of advice, and may God be with you. You should continue to be the people's representative before God, bringing their disputes to him. Teach them God's decrees and give them his instructions. Show them how to conduct their lives. But select from all the people some capable, honest men who fear God and hate bribes. Appoint them as leaders over groups of 1,150 and 10. They should always be available to solve the people's common disputes, but have them bring the major cases to you. Let the leaders decide the smallest matter themselves. They will help you carry the load, making the task easier for you. If you follow this advice, and if God commands you to do so, then you will be able to endure the pressures, and all these people will go home in peace. Moses listened to his father-in-law's advice and followed his suggestions. He chose capable men from all over Israel and appointed them as leaders over the people. He put them in charge of groups of 1,150 and 10. These men were always available to solve the people's common disputes. They brought the major cases to Moses, but they took care of the smaller matter themselves. Okay, so again, that's Exodus 18. And here's the deal on this, okay? Now, you might say, well, how does that apply to present day? All right, so here's the deal. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, there are all of these multiple tasks and just things to do that are necessary to keep the business wheel running. And when you are a solo, entrepreneur, you're wearing many hats. You're trying to do whatever you can to keep the business going, and that means that I'm doing the life coaching in the actual giving of information to people as they call. Okay, I'm actually doing the scheduling and managing when the appointments come in, and do they get on my calendar? So I'm doing the role of an administrative assistant. Then I'm doing the role of, an accountant and the record keeping and preparing the paperwork of when the income comes in and the expenses go out, and then preparing the reports that are necessary. And then, I'm handling the marketing. So it's like I'm creating the content that's going on these YouTube videos. I'm creating the content that's going on the website. I'm changing and editing the information that goes on the website. I'm creating buttons for people to pay. I'm thinking about the SEO and how that shows up in different feeds. What I'm saying is it's a lot to manage and handle. And as one person, I'm trying to do all these things. And yeah, it's easy to get burnt out when you're trying to do all those things. Just like Moses, he was trying to manage all the conversations with him and God. Then he's sharing all the information through the 10 Commandments, and then all the different rules and precepts that came out of the 10 Commandments. And he's trying to have all these personal conversations like the life coaching one-on-one with people. But it's so overwhelming because everybody has so many problems, and he's trying to do it all by himself. And the point is, at the end of the day, I'm totally exhausted. And what do I want to do? I want to zone out. I want to like turn it off, and I want to like watch some movies on, Prime Video or whatever, just to like zone out. And that's where, again, if I had an amazing team in place, okay, and I partially did in the past, okay, it's like those other people take on those roles as leaders, and they begin to, be responsible for that portion. So like when you hire an accountant or a bookkeeper, it's like you hand off your paperwork to that person and they're handling that for you now, and then that's off your plate. Yes, I still have to look at the numbers, but not like I had to previously when somebody else is leading that part of the portion, right? And then, the marketing, I've talked to different SEO people and marketing people, and I'm looking at their proposals and I'm looking at what they're offering and I'm considering what's going on. But the point is that right now, with my background in graphic design and, some web design, and, I'm like, well, what can I do to implement some of these things right now before I hand it over to somebody else? Because again, it's like, you got to have the money to back up handing it over to someone else, unless your team is like, unless there's an alliance or partnership of some kind with your company and other people's companies where you're kind of pooling in your resources as brothers and sisters. And at this point right now, like what I had before, and then what kind of fizzled out through the whole grieving process of losing my fiance, it's like I'm starting over again. So what I'm getting at is, as an entrepreneur, there's so many different parts of running the business, and you're either wearing all these hats or you're assigning different leaders in place to be able to manage that group of people. And so just like this portion of what Jethro was telling Moses is like, put these other people in place, have them manage 1,000, 150, and 10 people at a time. And then you're managing another portion of it. And that all together, you're instructing these groups, hey, these are the 10 commandments. This is the instruction that God gave. And this is what the Bible says. And if you can now instruct in this way as well. And the point is that if we all came together with all of our gifts and talents as the body of Christ, as brothers and sisters, and we really started to implement this same portion of what Moses was saying, but bring it into present day practice, imagine what kind of businesses and entrepreneurial, ventures we could have together as a team. But again, the things that are going on in this world of separation and greed and division and, everybody wanting to be a control freak and manage everything themselves. And now with AI, so many people are relying on AI to do all these things that people used to do. And they're taking away jobs, and they're taking away, the functionality of men being men and women being women. And now computers are running so many things. Now, again, I'm just giving you an example so you understand what I'm saying. I mean, I've been in a position where, there are certain, life coaches and tools that I use in different, portions of making an appointment. And a lot of these appointment things are AI driven. And, I put in my profile, like what my preferred times of the appointment were, and they were afternoon and evening. And then even though I made an appointment, the system canceled out my appointment. The AI canceled out my appointment. And then they put me in like a really early, like 7 a.m. appointment, which I would never make a 7 a.m. appointment. And so the point is, the system overrid my preferences, and what I put in is what I wanted. And it gave me a completely opposite appointment at 7 o'clock in the morning. And, when I caught this error, I was like, this is crazy. Like, it's so far from what, the parameters are that I set. But that's what AI is doing. AI is not a human. They don't care. It's a computer. And they're just going to plug in an open available slot. And they're not taking into consideration all the other variables that were put into place as a human. So again, as you rely on these other systems that you think are going to run your business, like, you might want to check in with how are they really running your business? Because, there's conflicts. And again, I have a calendar system. that I have in place where people can make an appointment and go to that link and then, select from my schedule the available time slots to have a time slot with me, whether it's a one-time thing or an ongoing thing. And, this other system I was testing out as like an option, like it's in addition to my current system. And it was a trial. It was like to check it out, but it started to override, like taking precedence over my current system. So what I'm getting at is I never gave it the authority to do that. Okay. And then I had to find all the errors on the credit cards and the statements to be like, wait a minute, I didn't even authorize this. But again, some of these AI things are driven that even though they say you have to click this link and turn it off within, before the 7-day trial, which I did, and I had screenshots to prove that I had canceled that subscription. I only wanted to do the trial and figure out, was the system viable for me, or did I want to integrate it? And the point is, I canceled that subscription. However, the AI system overrid my cancellation, and still to this day, it's been several months that I'm still being charged for a calendar system that I don't even use, that I've never implemented, that I've never put into my current system, and yet I'm still being charged for it. And there's no phone number on the website to talk to a human. You have to do all these ridiculous chats and email messages, and then I sent a bunch of screenshots today to Acuity and to Squarespace saying, hey, I want my money back. I want a full refund. Look at all those screenshots months ago, and you still haven't given me back my money. So what I'm getting at is that we are to put leaders in place, and that means people, not AI. AI is not a human. It's not a person. It can't reason. It doesn't have a conscience. It's not going to really consider all the variables, okay? A computer is a computer. It's not a human, okay? And we need to really be mindful of how we're running our businesses and how much we're leaning on these systems that potentially fail often and can give us the opposite result than what we really want. Again, I share a story that this morning I got a phone call from one of my providers, which is for counseling and coaching. And it's something that I set up online. It was something digital. And again, I was trying out this new system to see how it worked. And did I want to participate in a similar system, for my own business? And the point is, I was trying it out. And the bottom line is, the first appointment, I got an appointment with a counselor, coach, whatever. And then that one was outwritten and overrid and canceled. Then they gave me a second person, and it said on the thing, your first appointment is this. But then when I get the appointment, it's an intake. Now I've already filled out the intake digitally. I've already answered all the questions. But then that counselor, that coach asked me exact same questions that I already answered digitally. So they took 50 minutes to talk about questions I already answered. What a waste of time, okay? And the last 5 minutes are trying to pack in a session, which is ridiculous. You're not gonna feel like you got the kind of coaching or therapy or counseling that you wanted when you only get it in 5 minutes. That's ridiculous. Then the next thing is that company rescheduled me for like a future appointment. So I'm like, great. But then I got the call today from that person saying, hey, we're not going to be able to honor your future appointments because that person has left our practice. Like, I just had one session with this person, and in that short amount of time, we're talking about 2 weeks, that person has resigned from the system because they're frustrated with the system. They have to comply with the system that they're frustrated with, so they then resign. So then I'm like, okay, well, who's another person you can give me within the system? And so she starts giving me the options, and I wanted a Christian, biblical counselor or coach, and there was no other person in the entire system. Okay, and I'm like, that's crazy. And she's like, no, we don't have anybody else. I'm like, what about this and what about that? What about CBT and what about this trauma recovery? And she's like, oh, I can give you somebody like that. I'm like, okay, great. So I pick the next person who I'm going to schedule this. And so we start going through this process, and she goes, well, your first session will be an intake. And I'm like, I just took an intake 2 weeks ago. And before that, a digital intake. And I'm like, I'm not doing another intake of the same exact information again. I'm not doing it. And she's like, well, that's our system. I said, well, that's a terrible system because you're making people redo the thing over and over again. I said, people that have trauma, they can't handle that redoing the trauma and regressing back over and over again 3 weeks in a row. I'm like, that's traumatizing to someone who has trauma. And I was like, this is not working. And she's like, well, I can't give you anything else unless you agree to the next hour intake. And I'm like, well, then I'm not going to do it. So what I'm saying is, this is another example of, you know, an AI system which is going into the coaching and counseling field of what other coaches and counselors are using. And it's not serving its clients. It's literally keeping them stuck in regression and trauma because of the system. And there's no human regulating it. Nobody cares. And the coworkers, they're just like, I'm following a script. You know, they're like, oh, well, this is what it says for me to do next. I'm sorry that you're disappointed. I can't really help you, much less, you know, if you're not willing to set up this appointment like this, I can't advance to the next step. They can't even advance in their screen on their computer to the next step until you agree to those terms. And if I'm not going to agree to those terms, it can't advance to the next step. And that's where, again, a computer system is not able to be a human. It can't. Okay? But this is the kind of system that so many people are just, you know, agreeing to. And I'm not going to agree to that, because a computer, an AI, is not a human. It never will be. And I want human interaction. So anyway, I hope that this helps. And I look forward to talking with you soon. And I encourage you to, again, investigate what leadership, what practices you have in place as an individual, as a team, as a business. I encourage you to think about what the Bible says about these things, and also to consider your relationship with AI and apps and how they are running your business or how they're running you, and how you might want to make changes to that so that you really have control over human interaction and really provide human to human service, as opposed to this digital landscape that we're playing in, which is not serving the way that it should. Have a good day, everybody.